Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Arthritis in Home. Today, we're going to be looking at the election landscape across Canada and talk about ACE, Election Advocacy. I'm joined today by ACE's president, Cheryl Koehn. Cheryl, welcome.
Thank you, Kelly.
Arthritis is a really important constituency across Canada and in all the provinces and territories, as our viewers well know. 1 out of 5 voters in Canada live with arthritis. So our opinion, and most importantly, our vote, really counts. That's why ACE has spent so much time developing an election advocacy program that we implement every time a province, territory, or the federal government goes to the polls. Cheryl, you played a big role in putting that program together. Can you tell us a little bit about what that ACE election advocacy looks like?
You bet, Kel. Thanks for having me, and it's great to see everyone again out in Arthritis at Homeland. The ACE advocacy cycle, and particularly the election advocacy cycle, is really clear cut. It's actually quite a simple stepwise process, and it begins with reaching out to candidates who choose to run in an election. These are people who have, stuck their hand up and said, I am willing to go out and represent the people in my community at government. Those people need to be very well informed about the issues that face our community. Our arthritis community, as you point out, Kelly, is 6 million plus. Many of those, most of those, are adults who have a legal right to vote in the country. So the first thing we do is we ask candidates what they know about arthritis. We give them some information about it to further deepen their knowledge about the over 1 of 100 different types of arthritis. And we ask them specific questions that are related to pressing needs in our community. So we ask the questions of them through a poll questionnaire, and we send that to all candidates and all parties. They respond, we review those, they go right up onto our website, where our members and our large arthritis community across the country can review them and consider them before they go to the polls. In other words, we are the funnel of the information. We get it to our members. They then can consider the responses of both the candidates and the parties. And then they do what they have a legal right to do, and what is, I think, a privilege and a responsibility as a Canadian, and they march to the polls and they vote. And what we ask them to do as an arthritis organization that's one of the most active in advocacy in the country is to hashtag vote for arthritis. If arthritis is a part of your life, you want to make sure that the elected officials that you're putting into office with your vote consider your health needs. Consider the challenges that you have both at home and at work and in living your quality of life. And then once the vote comes back in, we report out to our membership and constituents, our own subscribers and followers, to the community leadership at large. And we go back to government that forms, and we say, here's what you said. And here's now what you're saying about your mandate letter, what you say you're going to do. And politely, we say we're going to hold your feet to the fire. We are going to ask you to work with us as folks who responsibly represent people with arthritis based on research evidence and lived experience with the disease. We want to work with you to achieve something good in policy and in policy implementation in the healthcare system that helps people with arthritis. So it's a full circle process. It's very accountable. It's very transparent, and it's quite easy to follow along and get involved in.
Thanks, Cheryl. And we're going to be applying or implementing that process in 3 different provinces in October.
And what
And
are those, Cal? What provinces are having elections?
oh, well, thank you for asking. Beginning on October 19th in British Columbia, October 21st in New Brunswick, and a week later in Saskatchewan on October 28th. So clustered all together, which requires us to be very strategic and effective in terms of our time trying to cover off three elections occurring within a 10-day period. I think what's interesting this time out, Cheryl, is that in all three provinces, we have real horse races. The polls right now indicate that in BC, New Brunswick, and in Saskatchewan, it's sort of a two-party race in each of those provinces, and it's very, very tightly contested. There's not a lot of difference in terms of the levels of support. So the incumbent governments, the NDP in BC, and the Progressive Conservatives in New Brunswick and the Saskatchewan Party in Saskatchewan are facing a really tough fight with their opposing party. It also means that when it's that close, they are going to be, I think, paying special attention to what issues emerge from voters or from constituency associations or communities like arthritis. So we are right now, we've sent our surveys out to BC and New Brunswick, and we're starting to get a real significant response from candidates and the party. So we're really encouraged about that. And our package is going out to Saskatchewan in the next few days. I think an indication that they are taking every vote seriously, and they're really, really working hard to get the support that they need to get them to the finish line. In terms of the issues, like almost every election, healthcare, the delivery of healthcare is in the top one, two, or three issues in each of the provinces. And in this time around, obviously, the economy. So with that being a high priority, we are going out and asking some fundamental questions about arthritis issues in all three provinces. And they're sort of focused around models of care, Indigenous arthritis care, wait times, reimbursement for medications, particularly advanced therapy medications. We're also asking them about biosimilar savings reinvestment. And maybe what we can do right now, Cheryl, is maybe look at some of those issues, spend a little time reflecting on what sort of questions we're asking those candidates and parties around those important issues. And maybe I'll start with you. I mentioned Indigenous health. What are we looking at there?
Yeah, so Indigenous health, as you know, is something that we're very committed to working on as part of the work that we're doing organizationally and in leadership across our community here on Turtle Island. And that is because it is so strongly embedded in the calls to action. So calls to action 18 to 24 from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report, Kelly, focuses on Indigenous health. So we're asking government, what are they going to do to either expand on or introduce culturally appropriate care? It's happening in small ways, but not nearly enough, and not deep enough, and not broadly enough in the provinces that are holding elections, and I would argue across the country. How are they going to shape policy and implement policy, Kelly, in direct partnership with Indigenous leaders in health that help Indigenous peoples navigate the healthcare system and receive the kind of coordinated care, culturally appropriate care that respects and upholds traditional healing practices and beliefs, as well as takes advantage of our institute, what we would call institutionalized or non-Indigenous approaches to health, How do we bring those together to help Indigenous peoples not just seek appropriate care, culturally appropriate care, but how to help them self-care in the ways that they want to pursue, especially as it relates to their arthritis. We also are focused on biosimilars reinvestment, as you mentioned, and we're questioning government now very closely. We actually have a special project going on right now where we're going to be issuing a report card that shows what provinces have done, and specifically provincial healthcare systems have done, to reinvest the enormous savings they have accrued through biosimilar transition policy. So where they've delisted brand name biologics, originator biologics, and are now implementing policy that has people go on biosimilar versions of the originators, which is perfectly safe and effective. But it means they're saving a pile of money. And as you know, ACE has said, well, part of the love has to come back to our community. We're the patient community that literally has made the biggest sacrifice in agreeing to make these changes, being part of a solution that is economically helpful to everyone in the province, not just people with arthritis, but we want some of that reinvested in our arthritis health care and self-care. So we're really asking people in government who are running for government, but also who will form government, what's going to happen. And further, enhancing the choices we have with new medicines coming into our medicine chest. So that leads me into reimbursement coverage, which is the third issue that you raised. So there's a savings piece of the drug file, but there's also, and reinvestment, there's also expanding the medicine chest appropriately so, making sure that we have the latest evidence-based medicines on our formularies to help people. And there's two in particular that remain not listed. And one of those provinces is in British Columbia that is not reimbursing two critical drugs for lupus, therapies that are new to this disease area that are, I'm not a fan of the phrase, but it's really appropriate here. They're game-changing. They're life-changing therapies for people with lupus, and they still don't, they're still not on the formulary in British Columbia. So those are the three things that are really top of mind for our community. We've put it right on their radar through the poll questionnaires and said, what are you planning to do? We are asking candidates and parties to articulate a position so that we can inform our members, so that our members and constituents in the arthritis community can turn around and say whether that pleases them as a voter or not, whether that's something they're going to get behind or not.
Yeah, those last two issues and the questions that we're asking, Cheryl, are so intertwined
Yeah.
because when you think about, and I think we want to let the audience know, when we talk about biosimilar savings, we're talking about a significant amount of
Oh,
money. So
hundreds of millions of dollars,
to
Kelly. Yeah.
use BC as an example,
Yeah.
they announced in June of 2024, this past summer, that in the past 5 years since they initiated the biosimilars initiative in the province, they've saved over $750 million. And they said they were committed to boosting medication coverage, not just of medications, but medical devices as well.
Yeah, and we
Um,
stood
of,
by
of,
their
of,
side. We
of,
stood by their side when they made that announcement, Kelly, because they made that commitment.
yeah, so
So here
for
is
new
where the vote hits the road.
So a great example where you have these savings and BC has slipped actually significantly in our
Yeah,
report card in
yeah.
reimbursement coverage. Here's a great example where they can use those savings to improve their ranking and improve the lives of people living with lupus in BC. So
And
really
as you,
interesting.
yeah, and as you know, Kelly, and maybe you'll talk about this, there's three other issues that are big on our radar, so to speak. That's
Well,
models
yeah,
of care, virtual care, and wait time. So maybe you can say just a couple of words to close us off here.
yeah. I mean, models of care is something that really informs so much of our work, and so we normally have a question that looks at models of care when we do these election survey or questionnaires, particularly important in New Brunswick and Saskatchewan. So, in New Brunswick, a big issue is access to primary care. And what does that mean for arthritis, people living with arthritis in that province? So, we're asking the government there and in Saskatchewan, where, in terms of models of care and access to services and access to care, what's really critical right now is providing service to people living in rural and northern regions of Saskatchewan. In both of those provinces, we're asking the government or the candidates and the people who are going to form the next government what they're going to do to provide high quality, accessible, and evidence based models of care, such as team based care or virtual care for voters living with arthritis in those provinces. And in both of those cases, we've also asked a sort of supplementary question specifically around virtual care. So we're looking forward to seeing what kind of ideas the candidates and the parties have in terms of improving the delivery of care and treatment for people in the provinces. And then finally, wait times. Um, this is it's an issue that affects every person that lives across Canada because all of the provinces and territories have a recommended benchmark in terms of being able to deliver hip replacement and knee replacement within 6 months. That's sort of the standard that has been set by the federal government. And in all three cases, the provinces are falling well behind that. And in particularly, New Brunswick and Saskatchewan are well below that standard. So we have a question for all candidates in those three provinces, what steps their governments will take to ensure timely specialized care for BC resident, or sorry, for BC, New Brunswick, and Saskatchewan residents who are struggling with osteoarthritis, including what they're going to do about joint place replacement surgery wait times that are within
Yeah,
the guidelines.
yeah.
So those are sort of, in summary, the issues that we identified and the questions that we're asking. And we really encourage everyone who's watching today, they want to get more information, to go to our jointhealth.org website, and they will find a page dedicated to voting for arthritis. They can find their provinces, they can find these questions, and most importantly, they can start seeing the responses as they come in real time.
Yeah, so just to give people the breadcrumb, it's jointhealth.org. They go to advocacy, and under advocacy, you'll see the election, all of our election stuff, and you'll see it historically. So we've been doing this fighting for the rights of people with arthritis in the country for a long, long time, using our ACE advocacy election cycle and the hashtag vote for arthritis. We really encourage you to learn about some of these issues by visiting the website. If you have other issues, we really encourage you to email us at feedback@jointhealth.org. And lastly, Kel, I think it's important, and I know you'll join me in this. We want to thank candidates who put up their hands and say, I'm willing to fight on behalf of people with arthritis, but all of their constituents, no matter what challenge they're facing in their community. I think it's kind of sometimes a lonely existence being an elected official. We appreciate everything they do, and we look forward to working with those in these three provinces that go on to form government.
And of course, we appreciate you, our audience. Thank you for joining us today. Remember, on election day, October 19th in BC, October 21st in New Brunswick, and October 28th in Saskatchewan, make your voice count. Vote for arthritis. Pick up somebody who maybe can't get to a polling station. Help them get to help them to vote. Whatever you can do to participate. and make sure that your voice is heard. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye bye.